Navy Coast Guard, how do you read me now, over?
Loud and clear, go ahead.
Roger, explosion and fire on the Piper platform. All personnel abandoned, over.
On the 6th of July 1988, the North Sea oil production platform Piper Alpha exploded, killing 167 men. The public inquiry into that accident reveals shortcomings in the management of safety on the platform, and there are many messages that managers of oil or chemical facilities need to note. Learning from accidents is a vital part of safety training.
Yes, we have one survivor on board. His name is Dusty Miller. He is not still shot with burns.
Are there any other survivors still in the boat? Of the Piper?
I don't think he will be in our
I'm pleased to introduce Brian Appleton, who served on the Board of Inquiry, to talk about the Piper Alpha accident and the messages for us in ICI from that sad event in managing safety and improving our safety performance.
As Jim explained, my aim is to tell you about the Piper Alpha disaster and to draw out of that lessons for us in ICI. The plan I have this evening is in 5 stages. I want to start by saying to you, what was Piper and what happened to it? And then I'll tell you a bit about the public inquiry, what its objectives were, and how it worked. And then the main part of my talk will be trace the sequence of events of the disaster itself. And out of those, I'll draw lessons for us in ICI. And then I want to end on a topic which I consider to be the bottom line of safety. So let's start with what was Piper Alpha and what happened to it. Well, Piper Alpha was a very large North Sea oil rig. It was located in the North Sea about 100 miles off the shore of Aberdeen. This is what it looked like. If you think of it roughly as a 75-metre cube, that gives you an idea of the size of it. What's it comprised of? Well, at this end, the tall tower thing is the drilling derrick. And up from the wells at that end came a mixture of oil, gas and condensate. Condensate, mainly propane. In the middle is the kind of plant that we're used to in ICI, a processing plant. What it did was to separate that mixture into its constituent parts. And then they were exported by pipeline to the shore. And finally, at the north end, the big white structure is the living accommodation. Because, of course, on an oil rig, you don't go home, you stay there. So that was Piper Alpha. What happened to it? Well, on the night of the 6th of July 1988, at 10 o'clock in the evening, there was an explosion. And there was a subsequent fire. And 3 hours later, that was all that was left. Just part of the south end under the drilling derrick. In 3 hours. 12,000 tons of steel was lying on the bottom of the sea, 474 feet down. But more importantly, in that 3 hours, 166 men lost their lives. Total death toll was 167. 1 man died of injuries the next day. Now let's turn to the disaster itself and trace the sequence of events. I've told you already that there was an explosion at 10 o'clock on the 6th of July. We know it was 10 o'clock because one man had just switched on the television news. And the announcer had barely said anything. So it was within seconds of 10 o'clock at night. We knew where it was, in part because some of the survivors said, well, I heard a thump and it came from that direction, another one from different directions. You could eventually home in And it was clear it was in one of the modules in the processing plant. This was backed up because the control room operator, in the minutes prior to the explosion, had a series of gas alarms in one module. So we were clear, 10 o'clock, we were clear where it was in the processing module. From the sequence of gas alarms, because the ones that came up were on the floor of the module, we were confident it was condensate, heavy, propane heavier than air. So in trying to determine what had gone wrong, why had there been an explosion, those facts made us concentrate on what had been happening in the condensate system prior to the explosion. I said the platform exported condensate. To do so, it pressured it up to about 1,000 psi. About 9:45 that evening, the main export pump, pressurizing the condensate, tripped out. The process staff tried to start it up, and they couldn't get it restarted. So they decided to recommission the spare pump. Now, they knew that the spare pump had been taken out that day for maintenance. In fact, for a major 2-yearly overhaul. It was going to last a fortnight. But they also knew nothing had been done. The pump had been electrically isolated. The suction and delivery valves had been shut, and the condensate of the pump had been blown down. But no work had been done, no slip plates had been fitted, the pump hadn't been opened up. So they decided to recommission that spare pump. Very straightforward job. Would only take minutes to reconnect it electrically. However, unbeknown to them, a second maintenance job had been done on that pump that day. On the delivery side, there was a relief valve. And that relief valve had been taken out for overhaul and checking its set pressure. The job had been done by contractors' people. They didn't get the job finished by 6 o'clock that evening. Overtime was restricted, so they decided to finish it the next day. And the contractor's supervisor took the permit to work back to the control room. Now, when I say permit to work, no doubt you're saying to yourselves, well, how could they not know about this second maintenance job? The permit to work system would tell them. That's exactly what it's for. Well, the reason they didn't know from the permit to work system was that on that Wednesday, there were faults in the permit to work system. First of all, the two permits, one for the major overhaul of the pump and the other for the relief valve, were not cross-referenced one to the other. Secondly, when the contractor's supervisor took the permit back at 6 o'clock to the control room, he didn't talk to the process supervisor because the process supervisor was busy with his handover. It was a shift change. So the contractor's supervisor signed the permit and left it on the desk. When the inquiry looked at the background, we found that this was not an isolated incident of a failure in the permit to work system. The permit to work system was operated permanently in a different way from that laid down. Permits were never cross-referenced. It was common practice for maintenance supervisors to leave permits on the desk and not talk to the process supervisor. The contractor supervisor handling the permit to work, it was the first time ever as a supervisor, and he'd had no training in the permit to work system whatsoever. But that wasn't unusual. Neither had the process staff. There was no formal training in the permit to work system at all. So, when they prepared to start up the spare pump, and they opened the suction valve and pressured the pump, condensate leaked out from where the relief valve had been taken off. Yes, blanks should have been fitted on those open ends. They weren't. So that was the first event, the initial explosion. Two deficiencies, the permit to work system and training.